where we drink, smoke, and bullshit about the life of a historic criminal. Now we're talking outlaws and gangsters. We're not going to cover too many serial killers. That's just a little bit dark for me, and this ain't no true crime podcast. Honestly, you can't call this a history podcast, because I'm no historian. I'm just a history fan that does some research and bullshits about it with his friends. So speaking of my friends, let me introduce you to my co-host. First with us today, we got Jbone.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
And then also with us today, we got Tone.
What up?
All right, welcome back to the podcast, fellas.
Thank
Glad
you.
to be here.
Tone, you want to go ahead and kick us off? What you got to drink today?
Yeah, I found this at a little place called Meyer. This is a Victory Sour Monkey Sour Triple. It's pretty fucking good. It's 9.5.
Nice.
Woo! Is it an IPA?
9.5.
Yeah.
It's a 6-pack too, right?
Yep.
Usually those
They
niners,
come in
they come in
fours.
fours.
Yeah.
Mhm. It's gonna be a good night.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it is a weekend. We usually record on like work days and shit. Like it's
They
a
give you
weekend.
your license back after a year.
Oh, go sweet.
All right, J-Bone.
I got a Samuel Adams seasonal summer ale. It's a little citrusy, crispy.
You like Sam Adams, right? Okay.
Yeah, I'm a Sam Adams guy, and like I said, it's a seasonal. 90% of their, besides regular Sam Adams, all their crap seasonal. So
You kind of you're an old man, so you're like, back in my day, Sam Adams was.
well, no,
craft
like
beer.
the new shit, like the winter ale has always been there, but like that new winter snap, they have a winter ale and then a winter snap. The winter snap's fairly new, and it's not that different than the winter ale. So yeah, the key to it is the memory is like the old shit, but they're just like everybody else.
Well, I've been having a lot more on the podcast, but I got some Yingling, which is America's oldest brewery from Pottsville. I can't say that. Pottsville, Pennsylvania. But yeah, it's a lot of the country thinks, well, yeah, Yingling. That's like, you get it, like it's with Budweiser. It's like a big beer everywhere, but we don't get distributorship here. So, but my son goes to school in Ohio, so we've been going down there consistently. So
Yeah,
I grab some while I'm down there.
a couple of my buddies always told me. I still never had one.
I mean, I can give you one. This ain't a real Yingling. It's a Yingling.
Yeah, I see
Diet.
the light, but I'll try it.
I wasn't gonna say nothing, but I was just gonna pretend like I at least had, like I'm basically drinking Bud Light. Before we get started, we got to make sure we take the time to thank Sixfo Sueno for letting us use his song in the intro. I got to thank Cancer for letting us use his song in the mid-roll. You can follow both of them on Instagram. It's Sixfo Sueno, F-O-E, and Cancer is Cancer the God. The E is a 3. And if you can't find them, you can get them through our website, Bad Guy Podcast, which I have all the links on there. You can follow us on our social media. We got the Instagram and TikTok are both Bad Guy Podcast. And then Twitter is the Bad Guy Pod. People have been hitting us up a lot more on social media. We've had a lot more interaction, and we really appreciate it. So go follow us on social media. Let us know what you think. Throw us some recommends. But we'll go ahead and get started. And the bad guy we're covering today is Jefferson Randolph Smith II.
This ain't negotiation time. This is Scarface, final scene, fucking bazookas under each arm. Say hello to my little friend.
A lot of name there. A lot of name.
And he's gonna probably have some nicknames.
All right. So we got Jefferson Randolph Smith II, a.k.a. Soapy Smith. He's got one more a.k.a. I'll let you know that when we get to it, because it kind of tip off some of the story.
Okay.
His name's Randy the Strangler. Like, oh, is he gonna strangle a bunch of people?
So Jefferson, he went by Jeff, was what he preferred to be called. So Jeff was born in Georgia, November 2nd, 1860. He was born into a wealthy family. His grandfather was a state legislator and plantation owner, and his father was a lawyer. And then by the conclusion of the Civil War, the family was financially ruined.
Family business went under.
They didn't have a pandemic, but all of a sudden they had a labor shortage.
Something happened where everything was going good, and all of a sudden business wasn't what it used to be. So in financial ruins in 1876, the family moved to Round Rock, Texas.
What was the attraction from Georgia? Rich plantation type, that type of southern people gone with the wind. What was Round Rock, Texas? Why that? Like, that seems like a weird jump.
Well,
Because it's pretty far west from where we start off at.
so what I'm guessing, I don't know for sure, is after the South lost the Civil War, Texas was like the last of the holdouts. Like Texas was the last place to
It
actually
was
free
almost
the
like its
slaves.
own country back.
Yeah.
Its own. It still is almost like its own fucking
And now it's the Southwest. Back then, that was the West-West, so that was the frontier.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing for a lot of these people that were diehard Confederates and slave owners and stuff, when all that goes away,
Go
Texas,
start a new life out west.
yeah, Texas would be the closest to
That's their California
what
back then.
was, yeah, but probably not far off from what the Mormons were doing, just trying to move further and further, just out by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
He tried some work as a cowboy, wasn't very good at it. His mom died in 1877 when he was 17 years old. Then in 1878, him and his cousin witnessed the shootout between Texas outlaws Sam Bass's gang and the Texas Rangers, which resulted in the death of Sam Bass.
Taken aback by the picture, could that just not be a pack of beef jerky or a bottle of whiskey?
That is Jack Link.
Yeah, exactly.
Soon after this, he moves out to Fort Worth, Texas, which he uses as a base of operations to travel town to town running short cons. He started off selling cheap trinkets and fake jewelry, and over time, he goes on to setting up rigged card games. He eventually masters sleight of hand and specializes in 3-card monte and the shell game. Really just any kind of little gambling that you could cheat at, he learned.
Right.
And what happened was he tried to be a cowboy, and he wasn't too into that, but he learned when you're out there, they all get together, there's these camps or these work spots where...
The equivalent of the yesteryear truck stop.
Right, and then everybody would sit around and gamble, so he learned the shell game at one point, got and started learning all the tricks to gambling, and just started basically going from town to town, camp to camp, conning people and hustling them for money.
You know what they call that in 2022? A carnival.
Carnival.
Now, that shell game right there, that's, hey, throw this ring around this bottle or knock these 3 little cans over that are like, oh, they're welded together, you fucking dickhead. Like, hey, man, we're packing up. We're out of here, man.
Eventually, in Fort Worth, he starts putting together a small, tight-knit gang. He recruited strictly intelligence specialists like pickpockets, thieves, burglars, shills, and mechanics.
Specialty guys, utility guys. We could just have a gang of motherfuckers, but if you do X, I'm good at this. Now we're a fucking firm.
You know what a shill is?
Hmm.
A shill specializes in, if we're doing a rigged poker game, our shill's going to be the guy, he's the nerdy dad tourist that puts down some money and wins big and is like, oh my God.
Yeah, and he tries to attract other people.
Yeah. So your shill is kind of like your hype man
Okay.
that is in on it, but nobody else knows in on it. So his
Right.
job's to get the crowd into it. Like, so he'll, depending on what you're doing, if you're 3-card Monte, he'll pick the, he'll pick the right card.
Come on, one more 7. I get $1,000. Oh my God. I'm cashing. No, you're not getting my money back. And as soon as I leave, then you can come in. That type of dude.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a shill. And then mechanics are the guys that could like fix cards. So that's what they call like card mechanics.
Okay.
So like Worm from Rounders.
Mm-hmm.
So if you got a mechanic dealing to your shill, you got this perfect setup for all these people to come lose their money.
Right.
Once he gets his gang together, one of their first early major con was the prize soap racket. So what they would do is he'd get a whole bunch of bars of soap for 5 cents a piece, and he'd go to these small towns and he'd set them up on like a little stand with the briefcase. And he'd set it up on a corner and start doing a presentation and attract a crowd. And each individual soap had wrapped with a piece of paper. And then he'd take various denominations of bills and slide them in under the paper where you couldn't see it. And then he'd sell the bars of soap. He'd sell them for like $1. And there was like a chance that you could win
Oh, okay.
some money. And he'd go put in bills as high as, $50 bills or $100 bills. And he'd put it in a bar of soap and start selling these bars of soap for $1.
So this is a 1877 TikTok diamond thing.
He'd hand some of the small bills. So he'd put a $5 bill and sell that to a neighborhood person. So they buy their bar and they get $5.
You get a
and they're like,
$5.
damn.
Willy
And then-
Wonka and shit.
Yeah. And then he'd take a 50 and hand that to his shill. And the shill would be like, oh shit, I got a 50. And then so now people start hurry up and buying them up because they know there's 100.
But that $5 winner's kind of an unknowing, unwilling shill itself, right?
Right.
It's part of the town, but I incorporate that into that's pretty neat.
Right. So it's a small one, but it's a real one.
It's a real one. It's generic. These people know that person. I'm leaving in 5 minutes. They're going to trust her when...
If it's just Bill the shill, that might be a little nervous.
Right.
But now when our buddy from across the street really like, oh shit, I know he's not in on it.
Mm-hmm.
We came here together. Now they know there are hundreds out there, and then when you start getting lower, people would start bidding higher. So they'd start buying like $3 and $5 bars of soap. And then at the end of the day, he'd just hand one of his $100. He'd just hand a $100 bill to one of their shills, and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, I got it." And then they pack up and just go to the next town and do it again. And they just make thousands of dollars off
Nice hustle.
off of
Fucking
fake
bars.
Yeah.
Soap.
In one town, he got caught pulling the scam and got arrested, and the local sheriff forgot his name when he booked him and just wrote his name down as Soapy Smith.
Oh, okay.
And after that, it stuck. And for the rest of his life, he was known as Soapy Smith, and his gang became known as the Soap Gang.
The Soap Gang.
And it should have been Soapy Smith and the Suds.
That would be better. So kind of like what we touched on, prior to this, all these criminals had worked independently as drifters because they had these weird skill sets. But together, they had this real powerful gang.
They formed
One
like
big
a
piece of
crooked
driftwood.
Voltron.
Yeah, exactly.
With the 1877 Wu-Tang Clan.
A little scheming ass Voltron.
Like an old soapy bastard.
Eventually, with their mixed skill set and his organizational skills, the Soap Gang became an underworld powerhouse in the frontier in the late 1800s.
They were pretty slippery.
But eventually, Soapy decides he wants to move on to bigger things. In 1879, he arrived with his gang in Denver, Colorado. Denver had an open gambling policy, and the Union Station train depot was a major stop-off to the western frontier. So with this giant Union Station and all these people moving out west, it was busy day and night with a never influx of fresh victims.
Like in out west New York, always a boat, or a stagecoach or something stopping here.
Soapy started to use his money to pay off local politicians, law enforcement, saloon keepers, and business owners, and they agreed not to target locals with their scams. And in turn, they were able to stop working town to town and set up shop in Denver. So instead of having to go all over the West and find all these marks, they were able to just sit in Denver and all those marks.
Remember
Stop
the
by them.
analogy of the carnival earlier?
Mm-hmm.
Now they got their state fairgrounds. Like, we're going to make fucking elephant ears and all this overpriced crap.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to do it all out this one spot. The suckers come to us this way. We're not traveling town to town. They're already coming to this town. They're traveling here.
Right.
We're just going to catch a few of their dollars on their way by.
So once they were able to actually dig in and not have to keep moving around, they were able to move on from their traditional short cons and expand into long cons, like building fake stock exchanges and lottery offices.
Right on. Guy's kind of really organized. He's ahead of his time.
Like, yeah, we'll sell them fake stocks.
Well, because you come up to modern day times, this dude's just what we call a politician.
By 1882, they had took over all the underworld rackets in Denver and absorbed most of the existing operators into his gang. At this point, he started adding specialists that were muscle and gunmen to operate as enforcers too.
Well, that's totally entering into our world, because most of our stories that involve, like, say, a gangster type will have the same setup, a really good businessman, but their mechanics and their tune-up guys are machine gun men, body getting rid of experts, fucking a real estate guy. So now this guy's Soapy's graduating up to he was already in the underworld, but kind of in that like carnival, like kiddie, campy. Now this is like shit. All I'm waiting is for an Italian or a Jewish man to meet Soapy here, and like I see the story, I see where it's going.
In 1888, he opened up a saloon/gambling den called the Tivoli Club, which became his base of operation. Now, legend has it there's a sign above the entrance that said Caveat Emptor, which is Latin for "Let the buyer beware."
Sounds
Well, look at modern
sounds
day.
fancy.
Yeah. Must be a
fancy place.
You see
must
that?
be French.
Yep, they got French up there. They got them Paris words. He eventually brought in his little brother Bascom to help him run the gang. Bascom opened up a cigar shop that he would run a rigged poker game out of the back of. By this time, he became known as the Frontier King of Conmen as his empire continued to grow. So that's why I had to wait on that one. If we said AKA Soapy Smith, AKA the Frontier King of the Conmen,
Yes.
you'd be like, okay, I guess I see where we're going here.
He's the Barnum and Bailey of con men.
At some point, he got married and had 3 children, but he worked real hard to keep his family hidden and separate from his criminal life. So most of his associates didn't even know he had a family. In 1889, the Rocky Mountain News ran a series of articles about Soapy's rackets, until one article, they mentioned that he had a wife and kids. On July 29th, 1889, Soapy walked into the Rocky Mountain News and beat the manager, John Arkins, with a weighted walking cane. Arkins was rushed to the hospital where he almost died. He had to be saved on the table. So they went and arrested Soapy and charged him with attempted murder. In court, he had already paid off everybody, and his defense was, he said, it's not attempted murder. If I wanted to kill him, I would have brought something a lot better than a cane.
He's right. Quit.
That's exactly what happened. They're like, yep, checks out.
He wasn't trying to kill you.
Charge him with assault. He would, right?
Nope, you only get one. You said he was trying to kill you. We proved he wasn't trying to kill you.
Right.
Now, this started to become a pattern of behavior for Soapy. He wasn't a smooth-talking, debonair con man. He would get violent when he drank, and he'd rather fight than talk his way out of a situation. He had like a custom revolver that he carried, and he carried 2 pairs of brass knuckles.
He was always ready.
Most people compared his behavior and demeanor more to a gangster than a con man.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Most of the con men we dealt with are like, talk you into thinking that, oh, maybe I was wrong and you're right. He's just like, well, how about you beat it, or I'll punch you in your face, punk.
Well, and definitely, like, Soapy here started off in, like, the connish, them kind of games. But all of his stuff was, since the beginning of the story, evolving into, he was just turning into, like, now he's controlling, like, vices. Yeah. Like, the little brother comes in, he's got a poker game in the back. We got this con up front.
Pretty
like,
much organized crime, right?
The gangster thing goes with that. Like, there's a good con. A con is somebody you want if you want somebody to sell you, like, the Golden Gate Bridge. If I'm running fucking all that, I want a motherfucker to go crack a motherfucker in the head when it's time to crack a motherfucker in the head.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's why early on he didn't have to bring on a lot of muscle at first, because he was the muscle.
He was the muscle?
Yeah, he organized a bunch of... He was the general contractor, so he brought in a...
He's like, my hands are too full right now. I can't handle it.
He was like Henry Ford that could, like, break faces. Like, I'll just add all the other things I can't do, like the card counters, the fixers, the da-da-da.
And now he's like, normally I'll whoop your ass myself.
Now that he's getting near 60 years old, like, I guess I got to hire some muscle, too. I can't do it all. I can't be the bouncer and, like, the strip club owner.
Once he is more, like, violent streak, I didn't write them all. There was a series of 18... like pistol whipping shootouts and gang fights. There's all kinds of dates, so I couldn't just like read. I counted to find out how many, so it was 18 of them. But so some of the highlights: Soapy was attacked while sitting in a train car where 2 people ambushed him with like an assassination attempt. He shot 2 of the assailants and got away unharmed. Soapy was suspected and implicated in the murder of Cliff Sparks. There's one story where him and his gang, they broke into a glass and detective agency and beat 2 of the detectives and chased them out of town. And they set the detectives up for assaulting a young girl. So they're like, no, we're the heroes. The detectives were fucking with this girl.
Damn.
And we, beat their ass and ran them out of town. In reality, that girl was a prostitute that they hired.
Right.
To get cleaned up and go say, yeah, they beat me. And look, I was a nice little kid and they beat me and shit. And they're like, get him out of here. Yeah. Now, in 1892, there was a reformist movement that began trying to crack down on gambling and began putting pressure on his operations. That was the thing with the West. There was a lot of Christians went out that way. Christians roll when they get their say, is they really crack down on the rules and shit.
Well, look at the ones that stayed back east at that time, and some of it still exists, like dry counties and...
Right.
So they were like, nah, we are not having it. Everybody's having way too much fun out in the West, and we're shutting this shit down. We're going to make the Wild West the nice, polite West.
So now Soapy's got to pay a governor or something to like try and legislate. We're outlawing Christianity here in Colorado.
In 1992, Soapy decided to move his operations to Creede, Colorado. It was a silver mining town that just popped up as a boom town. And it's one of those cities where at that moment it could have been the like next Denver. But he said, fuck it, packed up shop and fucking moved to Creede. One of the first things he did when he set up shop in Creede was he imported a bunch of prostitutes from Denver, and he used them to help him get leases signed over to him on a bunch of the buildings. So he would just use a lot of these prostitutes and have them either talk the guys into it, or he would have them hook up with them and blackmail them, and just use a series of different cons involving these prostitutes to get control of most of the buildings that were in the main primary business district of Creede.
Okay.
Like I've seen some reports say that he owned 39 of the 40 buildings on the main business district.
Who owned the other
the other one was Bat Masterson, who was
all right.
He was a big Wild West guy.
Batman.
The rifleman.
Another guy, Bob Ford, the coward Bob Ford, who's the guy that shot Jesse James in the back. He had owned a bar that he was killed in Creed that probably was just some different shit, but some people say it could have been connected to Soapy Smith. It probably wasn't. But for the purpose of this, we could say that Soapy was running that shit and he didn't like Bob Ford. But Bat Masterson was the one business that he didn't take over. And not only were they cool, like Soapy would go to his place. Like he'd go there and gamble and he'd go there and drink and gamble and shit like that.
Right.
All the buildings he took over, he'd lease those and rent them out to all his associates and his gangsters. So the guys could all get their own little spots to run their own little cons out of, like up and down the strip. He opened up a gambling hall / saloon called the Orleans Club, which he used as his base operations. And then in Creed, he brought in his brother-in-law, who he made deputy sheriff. His brother-in-law was actually a straight-laced dude. Like, he was never a criminal or anything. He was a lawman his whole life.
Just look the other way for me, man. That's all I ask you to do. Just look one way.
So not long after his brother-in-law became deputy sheriff, they quickly took over most of the criminal rackets, and Soapy appointed himself the Creed camp boss. He said, you know what, this whole thing,
It's mine.
it's mine. But in order to get the support of locals, he paid to have churches built, and then in the meantime, he let preachers have access to his buildings to hold their services and stuff.
Oh, yeah. It's co-op.
He also donated large sums of money to the poor, and he would pay for the funeral services for deceased prostitutes. I seen something, I don't know if it's true, that he'd pay to have the prostitutes buried, but then the people of the town demanded that the prostitutes be buried outside of town.
Well, I'm not paying for an out-of-town funeral. See? And he ends up...
Well, they're like, well, and we're not burying no prostitutes in town, so we're in a real pickle. So this is going to be weird, but this is true, so bear with me. So while he's in Creed, he acquired a petrified man that he named McGinty, and he would charge people 10 cents to view it.
Hey, whatever makes a buck. That's sweet.
So this is McGinty.
Now this guy's an all-around business guy, though.
Like now it's in a place I think it's called Ye Old Oddity Shop in like Washington. They actually have 2 petrified people there. But they have all kinds of different weird shit. But they have McGinty now. But when he got him, what he did was he would charge 10 cents to see him. But then he'd make sure everybody always had to line up. And then when people were in line to see McGinty, his guys would go out front and work the 3-card money and the shell games and stuff for the people while they're waiting in line. And so his whole McGinty scam revolved around it being like the carnival. You know, we're talking about a time where people don't have cable or TV or anything.
Right.
So if there's anything in town, you're like, oh shit, I got 10 cents. I'll go down there and look at this weird thing,
Right.
you know? And
$1 bottle of water while you wait.
Mummy without the wraps.
So I read different stuff. I read that it was a skeleton that got poured concrete over. I read something else that said it was like mummified because they used like arsenic or something. So I don't know which one is true, and that's like above my pay grade to figure out.
My man Soapy, I bet you that's a skeleton. Paper mache the fuck up. Because I only want 10 cents to see it. Nugindi is not the big attraction. What my guys are doing, tuning you up out in the line. That's like, okay, I got you in Cedar Point. You're here for McGinty. You're here for the Magnum. But while you're in line, I'm coming out to you. Hey, man, you want a $5 temporary tattoo? I got, like I said, $1.50 bottles of water. I got, like...
Yeah, you want, like, here, this weird balloon thing or like a foam finger that's, like, something that you will hate.
I'm only making pennies off this, but I'm already charging you 10 cents to see fucking my paper mache skeleton.
But eventually, and pretty rapidly... the Creed mine died. Oh, and at this time, it's called Creed now. At the time when they were there, it was called Jimtown.
Jimtown?
Yeah, like J-I-M.
I wonder who the first guy to get to that silver mine was.
Jim.
Oh, Jim.
And he wasn't bright. He didn't
I call this land Jimtown.
Jimville. What do you think?
Jimville.
Should I go with Jimtown?
Jimtown, Jimville, Jimburg, Jim Township.
But yeah, so the mine dried up, so people stopped going out there. So slowly the town started to slow down and less people started coming around. And around that same time, Denver began to repeal the reform policies because that was hurting their town too. And they weren't making as much money because people just started taking different ways out west. Because they're like, well, no, I don't want to go to Lameville, USA on my way out west. My last stop to the west, and now I can't even gamble or whatever. This is no fun. I don't want to go there. So Denver's like, you know what? We're going to have to repeal all these. You know what? We're just going to open it back up like we did before. And Creed was starting to fall apart. So Soapy packed up McGinty and moved.
I'm taking my paper mache mummy and I'm out.
And he moved back to Denver and reopened the Tivoli Club.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I seen some shit that said it was never closed. That he just went back and just reacquired it. Just went back in like, yeah, lease is up. Daddy's home. It was fortunate timing because after he left and set up shop back in Denver on June 5th, 1892, and this seems like legit coincidence. It doesn't seem like he had anything to do with it. Creede lost most of its business district, including the Orleans Club, in a giant fire. It really doesn't seem like he had anything to do with it. I mean, that shit would happen, especially you start having like ghost towns or giant. Back then, you would throw up these wooden buildings and shit, and you just leave them abandoned. And
maybe the Christians just came by and sent it to hell.
Yeah.
Go back to the hell
where you came from.
All right. Well, what we're gonna take a quick smoke break, refill our drinks, and we'll be back in a minute.
Shackles to break out of. They cower, solo but mob them and they crowd us. Spilling in the street with heat like hot lava. Pop bottles, molotovs tossed and rocks follow. Ominous disciples like vipers, they strike quickly. Come at me like an army, I'm tearing you down with me. Spit like a baron, rulers of bread like Kaiser. Roll with the goal and get beaten like outsiders. These amateur animals swing in the wrong jungle. Climbing the wrong vines mean these lions will snuff you. Concrete wilderness building our own structures. Writing our own order, appointing our own judges. Overthrowing authority, morally lack conscience. Fighting for survival with rivals with throat punches. Monitor the area carrying curved swords. Slither in the brush till we crush them with brute force. Men storming the harbor with armored attack armaments. Calling all guards to swarm them and skin their faces for ornaments. Order more troops to corner them, Agent Orange and order them. Kill them all, just destroy them and let your guy get to sorting them. Code of honor corroded as soon as it was awarded. Celebrations were thwarted before they could be supported. Rolling thunder bombarded them, flaming dart put a part in them. Separate and disarm them and send the bulls to the parliament. Operation Niagara, Viet Cong on the battle with landmines and grenades and flamethrowers to scatter them. Dear mama, this battle is harder than what we thought it'd be. Every part of me scarred, I'll be recognized when they mortar me. It's almost time to run, put on your army helmets now. You're running toward the sun with all your guns, defenses down. Flashes everywhere, the lights create an atmosphere. Water in your lungs, you pray for death, but life is here. You're about to die, face it, you're about to die. Zero sand in your glass, fuck it, you can't even cry. Put a dagger to your neck, just to keep yourself in check. Put a dagger to your neck, just to keep yourself in check. Everybody grab a side as you fight to stay alive. Dancing on a hand grenade so you can die and they survive. Silver bullets in the sky, dropping 7-second death. Scattering the children, run, rub until there's nothing left. Ashes in the water, sons and daughters hold their flags up high. Wallow in the harbor as the military tanks arrive. Penetrate the border with disorder like an animal. Every war has the honor of turning kings into cannibals.
All right, we're back.
Live and direct.
So we got a drink. We got a cocktail that I made. Can everybody take a drink see what you think?
Oh,
okay, yeah. I can taste it now. Tastes a lot different before you stirred it. I could taste the smokiness and the Coke. It's going together better than when I first tasted it.
What do you think?
I jumped the gun.
Good.
When I looked at it, I could tell that wasn't what it was supposed to look like.
Okay. It's got a nice
That's why I
color
start-
to it now.
To me, it's got a little vanilla-y, like almost like a root beer-esque
yeah.
aftertaste.
So what is it?
So we had it on the show, but as a shot. So there's two ways to make the same drink. So the drink's called the Fat Elvis, which is Howler Head banana whiskey and Screwball peanut butter whiskey.
Okay, yeah, I taste the Screwball. Okay.
But as a shot, it's just a shot, like a half and half. As a cocktail, it's just made with same drink, but with on ice and with cola.
So the cola mixed with those nutty and banana flavors, that's what gives it a like almost a root beer flavor, but it's real good.
I can taste the banana.
I remember I was on an episode when we did the Fat Elvis shots, and I must say, like, I like both of those. I like the banana and the peanut butter drinks by themselves, and that was a good shot. This is a decent drink. I could see drinking a few of these as my main drink, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I'm not a mixed drink guy at the bar, but like if I'm gonna mix, like this ain't bad right here.
I do them with like a little less Coke. Like if I'm making a drink at home, like I'll put even less Coke in it, but I'll sip on it for a long time. Like I put more in it because that's the actual recipe to make the actual drink. But when I make them myself, I like half off on the Coke and shit.
This is good.
Good. I like it.
So I've found that I like the cocktails, like I make them because they're simple and I'm not a mixologist like my wife, so I'm not good at that. But what I found is most of the drinks that I mix with soda, it's good because there's something with the carbonation that does some of the mixing for you. Well, so what you do is you mix the whiskeys first, the Howler Head and the Screwball on ice and shake that, and then pour those into the glasses, and then pour the Coke.
Kind of rough pour, like let that bubble, like.
Yeah, and then pour it on the drink to get the carbonation to kind of
mix it
a little.
Yeah, like I say, a little rough pour over that huge ass ice cube. Yeah. No, how about, I don't know if you had them both ways, Tone, but how about you, Locke? Did you like the Fat Elvis better as a drink or the shots?
I like the cocktail better.
Well, much better.
I don't think I had the shot over here. I missed out.
The shots.
Okay.
I mean, it's all right. It's like this, but shittier. You got the Cadillac version.
Of course. Best for the best.
But yeah, so see, keep listening. It'll teach you how to make these badass and it was easy. You see, I went and did it real quick. And
and that was pretty quick for you.
I left a mess up there. It looks like a fucking train hit the kitchen. And
well, when the wife gets home, then that's quick for her. Hey.
I made these 3 little drinks. It looks like a fucking bomb went off. Like, what did you make, spaghetti dinner or something? Like, nah, I made 3 cocktails. Like, how did you break 2 plates? Well, when we left off, he had left Creed to set up shop back in Denver after they had repealed their reform policies.
I'm taking my mummy and I'm going home.
So when he got back, he just went back to business as usual. He became so big. I mean, he was just known as like a legitimate, like a crime lord. It wasn't even like a con man. Like he was a crime boss.
Right.
He was like running organized crime. He became so comfortable with it that he admitted to reporters he was a con man. He quoted to the paper, "I consider bunco steering more honorable than the life held by the average politician." In 1894, there was a newly elected governor, Davis Hanson Waite. And he came in with a reform policy. Again, and he fired 3 corrupt Denver officials as part of his reform policy.
What?
So he just comes in and says, broad strokes, fixing Denver, you guys are fired.
He ain't draining the swamp on us, asshole.
So the officials refused to leave and they barricaded themselves in City Hall with a bunch of armed allies, which included Soapy Smith. It also had, like, I think it was like the Bungle gang, but it was like whatever his rival gang was in town, they were there.
See, when you're getting the bungles, when you're getting the bungles and the suds united on one side, you know what I'm saying? That's when true. That's like the Bloods and Crips uniting for a cause, you know?
Yeah, they did a mixtape together and shit.
Exactly.
Look, because if these dirty politicians go away, we're all fucking.
This is the 1894. We're talking Occupy Denver. I mean, come on. This is their movement, y'all.
Since these guys backed them armed at the City Hall, Soapy Smith was then deputized.
But you know what's kind of dope about that little fun fact? Like right now, like in our real world in the 20s, like in 2020s, sheriffs have so much power. They can deputize anybody, even not in the Old West times. You've never been like through Michael's police training. You can get deputized if shit pops off.
In the Cicero election riots, it worked in reverse, where they banned Chicago police from sending their guys to Cicero, like because Capone had bought that shit off and they were going to win the election. And the Chicago was like, we'll send all our cops to help keep your shit in line. And since he bought off the politicians, they're like, no, we're not letting your cops come in our jurisdiction. Well, they didn't. And then the county sheriff deputized all those cops for a day, which gave them the right to go into Cicero, not as Chicago police officers, but as Cook County deputies.
Yes. Damn.
And just got what's your job? Same thing. You're a cop. You're just a different cop today.
Right. But I don't want to get too law with it, because we're on the bad guy side of the law here. But what I meant by that whole story of telling you like how they could deputize, I didn't know. I thought when a federal agent came up, until recently I was schooled, those guys, those sheriffs that deputize, like a county sheriff and those guys, they're elected officials. They hold more weight than like federal officials. I did not know that. It's a cool fun fact that they can deputize like a motherfucker. But the fact that they could tell a FBI or a ATF, like, you're just a letter agency, get to go fuck yourself. Like,
this is my fucking county.
Because I always thought and I know my shit, being a gangster on, our side of the law. I thought I knew, like, no, the feds ain't shit to a sheriff. Like, nobody's shit to a sheriff. Besides, like, your president and your military, like, shit, sheriffs hold some fucking weight, brother.
See? You say that like you ain't met Roscoe Pico Train. You should have known. Sheriff don't give a fuck.
You want me to get flash on you? You want me to stick flash on you? Well, he get you.
It still holds true. Almost any West guy we cover at some point gets deputized and has, no matter how bad of a criminal you are, at some point you're in a situation where they're like, we need people with guns. Yeah. And you're like, dude, I'm
I'm
whoever
the law today, motherfucker.
Yeah, I'm Chavez. And they're like, well, you know who we want on our side? You've seen Young Guns, right? We're going to war. You want Chavez? So the governor doesn't dig their standoff at City Hall. So he sends in the state militia, who showed up with 200 troops, 2 Gatling guns, and 2 12-pound cannons.
Damn.
Yeah.
Call that enough.
And they just rolled it down the street and pointed it at City Hall. They're like, bam, we won, full house. And Soapy Smith was like, bam, we got enough dynamite. There was like all these people had lined up to watch it and shit. And he said,
we take the whole house down.
Yeah, we'll just blow this whole motherfucker up. We don't got any bigger guns, but we got so much dynamite. We could blow up so much of the middle of Denver.
Let's not take away from you roll 2 cannons down the street. I don't care like if they're older, slower, like shooting big wadded balls of lead. You brought 2 cannons to the fight.
The pressure from local politicians because of the crowd actually ended up making the governor punk out, and he had to take all his stuff and move it back out. Today, not a single shot was fired. It was called the Battle of City Hall. So the governor backs down and he decides to fight it in the courts. And it goes all the way to the Colorado Supreme Court. And the Colorado Supreme Court rules that the governor has the authority to appoint officials, but he doesn't have the authority to fire them. But the governor ultimately won because he's still the governor.
Yeah.
So he starts being a dick, and he's like, well, we're shutting all this shit down again. I was just sending my own guys to work in Denver. At first, when they made stuff illegal, Soapy Smith was using the fact that he was a deputy to his advantage. So he would run poker games, and if guys would like lose a big hand or lose a bunch of money, he'd just go arrest them real quick, and he'd be like, look, you got 2 choices. You can just either leave right now or you're arrested for gambling. And they'd be like, all right, we're out.
Yeah.
Like, all right, cool.
The money stays.
You get the hammer or the money, but you can't have both.
Eventually, the governor runs him out of town. His brother got arrested. Soapy tried to get him out, but they're like, nah, we got this motherfucker, and he's locked down. So Soapy just kind of bounced out. So he returned to traveling town to town, running short cons. At one point, he has established communication with the president of Mexico and tried to set up a foreign legion. And he had actually set up a recruiting shop where he's going to hire like local gangsters to go work a military job in Mexico as foreign legion soldiers.
Suicide Squad before Suicide Squad was the thing.
But that deal fell through, and then...
No! It was on such solid quicksand to begin with.
It sounds like such a good plan. Surprised that didn't work, man. Hey, President, you want...
Presidente.
And Presidente's cool. He wanted to rent in Bamboo. Like, he was going to charge kids, like, only 5 pesos to come see him. Like, no, dude.
So, hey, hold on. Did you mention anything about the AKA?
Oh yeah,
Why it's now Sylvester?
Yeah, we never touched on that yet.
Oh, so McGinty.
Good call.
So McGinty, because the whole Soapy Smith McGinty thing was unknown at the time. Like, you know, this is all like pre-internet. All these things happen. So at some point he loses.
If you weren't there, you didn't know about McGinty.
Right. He's a con man, so he just owned them and sold it and ran his cons and blah blah. And at some point, well, now you know he's on the road. His brother got arrested. You can't carry McGinty.
Yeah.
You already got a secret family. You can't have a petrified dude that you're running town to town with. El Presidente backed out that fucking deal and shit, you know, so I don't know what I'm going to do. So I don't got room for McGinty, so he just sells them off to some random dude.
Oh, I didn't realize that McGinty, Sylvester is his AKA? He's the dummy's AKA? Okay.
So he was acquired as Sylvester at the Ye Old Curiosity Shop, where he's currently at now.
Right.
And then it turns out through research that it's the same person. That McGinty is now Sylvester.
So I got the story straight. When I buy McGinty, he's Sylvester. I name him McGinty to give him more of a exotic sounding name to get your 10 cents to view.
Right.
That's part of my, like, this dude is sweet, like a marketing genius, like a good businessman. Crack you in the fucking face with his leaded fucking cane.
You made articles about saying that he's the biggest con man in the area. He didn't do shit. You said, and he's got a wife and kids, and he came and beat you almost to death.
And he got her off.
Yeah.
But when he imports the
Fuck,
hookers...
I shouldn't have said that.
When he brings the hookers to Creed, but not so much to start the brothel, as to like, hey, go fuck these landlords and stuff like that, you know, like real... He's ahead of his time.
Because you notice all the stuff we talked about, we never talked about him running a brothel. We talked about him paying for...
Yeah, we haven't talked about any titties yet.
No
I never had to use the
episode.
hot and cold running pussy because he doesn't set up that vice. Like, they used the one little hooker in Texas to like, hey, say these two dudes, these two detectives were raping you and, you know, it's a Me Too type thing. Like, he uses hookers in a unique way. And this is 1880s, 90s. Like, it's really... Some of the shit he's doing is what they're doing in the real, was what we're going through right now. It's kind of, he's ahead of his time that way.
We haven't talked about him running brothels. We've talked about him interacting with prostitutes.
Using prostitutes
for his cons or paying for their funerals, but never using them as running them for money and shit like that.
Right.
You know? So
He didn't have his OnlyFans yet.
Yeah.
That's why he was fighting so hard to have him buried in a town, right?
Well, yeah, because they were like almost just employees to him.
Right. Like,
oh, yeah, and one of the things Soapy might have did with McGinty is he might have acquired him and pretended like he dug him up in the area. So, like, he got him, and it's whatever, this petrified dude that they're passing around. But
dude, I could see Soapy with the Indiana Jones hat, the whole nine, the shill coming over like his Watson. Oh my God, sir! I think you found yes, that is the Great McGinty.
the Great McGinty.
Go dear and wide and gather up all the youngins. Tell them I need 10 cents a piece to come see the Great McGinty. This dude's ahead of his. I'm telling you, this dude fucking rocks.
Right, he was like 100.
Why? Because why would you just
1,000 years
say,
ahead of time?
Yeah, dude, I bought him down at the fucking Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum. He was called Sylvester, and I renamed. No, fuck no. I've been on searching for him. 4 oceans later, I found him right here in Creed.
Creed, Colorado. So he scrapes up a living for a couple years, and eventually the Klondike Gold Rush of 1897 leads him to settle in Skagway, Alaska. So.
And when that fell through, he just had the Klondike bar, like he invented that little shitty ice cream.
So he follows the gold rush up to Skagway, Alaska. He struggles a little bit at first, but he sticks it out up there, and eventually he ends up doing what he always does and ends up building him up the same empire. So he uses the exact same blueprint. First thing he does is he buys off the U.S. Marshal, and then he starts rebuilding a gang, and then he opened up a saloon named Jeff Smith's Parlor. Jeff Smith's Parlor is actually still around today in Skagway, Alaska.
Same building?
Yeah. So this is actually some of the Soap Gang guys.
That's the Suds.
It's actually the same building, but it's relocated, I think.
So he just keeps naming his gang the Soapy Gang?
No, I guess they just, in hindsight, maybe it's just what they're called over the course of the story. It's an old enough story that history kind of rewrites it that way.
Yeah, okay.
Just once they started calling him Soapy and they started calling him the Soap Gang, because technically this would be a whole different gang.
Right.
But yeah, he opens up a parlor, and then he buys off a Marshal. And He starts taking over the criminal rackets. Same thing. Shell game, 3-card Monty. Start rigging games. Start just pulling cons. Jeff Smith's parlor became known as the real City Hall. Once there, in addition to his usual cons, he also started a fake telegraph service.
Where your messages wouldn't go nowhere? Yeah. I pay you to wire my wife back a message home in California.
Yeah, she got it.
Beep, 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 beep. $15. That's awesome. How you fucking have that scam, though? That's dirty. Like,
well, he had wires. He had wires that went into the walls.
Yeah, patch me through to San Fran. He just plugged shit into the wall to a piece of cord.
Well, he would sell your responses back. So when you got wire back, he'd sell those back to you too. Oftentimes they were asking for requests to wire money.
So he's got to hand you money to wire back to them that they never get.
So Soapy could also, for a small fee, he could also wire the money back to.
And keep the money that he's not wiring on top of the fee? That's awesome. This guy is before his time.
So here's the worst part about this scam, right? Is there was no actual telegraph wires in that town until 1901. So at this time, there was no wires anywhere. So he had wires that like went into the wall when you're in there.
Can't you just hear Soapy say, "You never heard of Wi-Fi, asshole?" In 1884 or whatever. The fuck you mean there's no wires?
So where Skagway was this big stop off for all these people kind of on their way from the gold rush. You know what I mean? You go to Alaska, you kind of check in at Skagway, and then you go out into the Yukon to go get that gold. Go get that gold. Go do your, your vision quest, whatever you're out there trying to do. Go dig some gold and be rich and shit. And he realized, wow. So yeah, you just come back and be like, yeah, your wife said, I love you too, but we desperately need money. And they're like, yeah, here's the gold I got left.
Hell no.
I don't know. What do I got?
Here, can you send this to her? Yes. Should we ship out?
I'm going to take it myself. I'm packing up right now.
Well, one of the things that was a legit business that he seen going on that was real profitable, and he set up a fake he set up a fake shipping company where like those same guys, like whenever they needed to ship back home, whereas they, collected stuff or got gold or money or whatever, and they just kept shipping it back, and they set up a whole shipping company. Well, and they did the same thing where they didn't fuck with the locals. They only did it to like these people that are dropping in and out. Even though they were known as criminals and they were dirty and they're shady and people kind of didn't like it, it benefited the community. And he's building churches and
giving turkeys away and doing all the stuff that Al Capone would have did. No, but like say you live there, like you're third generation, and then like you don't want to see the guy from Arizona come over on a ship, go out and get pans of gold and be a billionaire. So you're rooting for fucking old Soapy. Like, yeah, fuck him. Tell him everything he finds that you'll ship it to him, and then like it's a Robin Hood thing. Like I might not get a piece of that guy's stolen gold because I got morals and I don't want it, but like he said, my church is new, my fucking their version of Walmart back then in Saskatoon. Like that's probably a nice place to shop.
Well, and a lot of these people had these opinion of these city boys or these, when you talk about in the South, when you talk about the carpetbaggers and stuff, like there was a real deep rooted dislike for these people. So some guy that's ripping them off, like, fuck them. Especially when these guys are, they're coming to town and they're gambling and starting fights. And like,
well, it's everywhere.
They are the bad element. Like, they might not be the bad element, but they're what's attracting the bad element. So he also started to add clergy, saloon keepers, and reporters to his gang or on his payroll. So sometimes he just had straight up gang members. Your job is you're the new preacher. Go start a church somewhere. He would just get support around the company. And when these new people would come in, sometimes they'd even greet him at the docks. They'd be like, hey, what are you doing? I'm Father David or whatever. You know what I mean? Let's get you settled in town. Yeah, check in here. Just leave your bags there. You're good. Come on. Oh, do you want to have a drink? Relax. Next thing you know, the guy turns around and he just spent all his money gambling and he lost his stuff.
And intel, since you met Father Flanagan right off the boat, you've already got befriended by him. You've told, now I'm going to steal your physical, all your stuff. But intel, you've told him where you're from, what brought you to Alaska, how long you plan to be, what your true intentions are, all in one day. Like and then did you say he hired reporters? Like this dude is fucking a modern day, like he should have came out in like the 60s or 70s. He would have had a nice long career.
Salon keepers too, or saloon keepers, like guys would get all drunk. Hey, got you a hot one coming in. Hey, you want to go play some fucking shell game?
He's got $8,000 in his fucking purse, and he's got a deed to a small silver mine up the road. Hey, yeah, get him in my fucking silver game. Here's $200,000. A bartender back then, I give you $200. That's like me giving you $3,000 right now. Yeah, I'll set this guy up.
I don't even know him. Eventually, a group of concerned citizens started a vigilante group called the Committee of 101, and they started threatening Soapy to leave town. He, in response, started his own group, which was called the Law and Order Society. But he's
of 102.
And he refused to leave, and they just backed down. So Soapy decides he wants to just rehab his image. So he just really doubles down on being a respectful member of society. So he does his normal, he buys the churches and donates all the money and fucking does what he always does. But the Spanish-American War kicks off, right?
And his patriotism kicks in. Fucking, I love Soapy, man.
So he puts himself together a volunteer army, and he writes the Department of War and says, hey, I'm going to put together an army in case you need us for the Spanish War up here in Alaska. And the Department of War says, bam, federal approval. Go ahead, put together an army. So Soapy puts together a little army up there and makes himself the captain. It's called the Skagway Military Company. He ended up getting a letter from President McKinley, which gave him a official recognition of his company, which he hung up in his bar. So not only is he a deputy, he's a military captain.
I was going to say, you guys earlier in the story thought it went to his head when we made him a deputy. Now he's a captain of a military regiment. That he called in, he wrote in and said, firing this thing up too. If you guys, well, yeah, we're making you part of the army. Like, dude, fucking Soapy's the shit. He commandeered 2 boats when he got up there. He called the Navy, like, you know what? Start my own branch of the Navy too. I'm the North Atlantic Fleet. I got 2 fishing boats up here. But them 2 cannons from Denver, they're on my boats.
1898, at the 4th of July, he was the marshal of the parade, where he led the volunteer army on his gray horse. And then they set him up at the grandstand where he sat with the governor and all the top officials in the state. It worked and became super popular again.
This dude did all the cool shit that every gangster we've ever done on the show did, but before they did it. Does Al Capone type shit. Like, yeah, I'm going to build churches, give away turkeys, you know what I mean? Do it big.
So a couple days after the parade, there's this miner named John Douglas Stewart, who's this real big shot. And he comes into town with a bag with $2,700 worth of gold. It's like $80,000 worth.
Good thing Soapy just started a Store Your Money place last night.
Right off the bat, he comes to party and he loses all of it in 3-card money to the 3 of Soapy's gangs.
Oh, $2,700 in that time.
So they get in a big fight. He refuses to pay. Take his bag of gold and they bounce out. But this guy's not just your typical goofball coming through. He's a big shot businessman. So he goes to the authorities. They stole my money, bro.
What the fuck? Those guys over there stole my money.
Is the authority he's talking to named Soapy Montgomery Williams? Like,
yeah. He's like, really? Tell me everything you know.
Just tell me this. Which way did they go? Can I borrow your horse to catch them?
We'll get back with you.
So the law don't help him much, and he doesn't get anywhere.
No, I'm so surprised.
But the Committee of 101, he's like, fuck yeah, we got our cause. We're with you. You got to give them their fucking money back. And Soapy stood by his guys, and they said, no, he lost it fair and square.
I just completed my investigation, and I find these men totally innocent.
And he told them, fuck off.
Yes, because those guys were totally innocent.
The next day on July 8th, while Soapy was drinking, he got word from his gang that the Committee of 101 was meeting to vote to have him kicked out of town.
He thought the only thing that was missing was his vote, so he grabbed his cane and he headed on down there.
Well, he did better. He grabbed his pistol and his Winchester, and he went down there, grabbed 6 of his dudes. The meeting was out on these wharfs, and these wharfs, they're like long Alaskan wharfs, so they're like 3/4 of a mile out. So he goes down to the Juneau wharfs. He takes like 6 of his guys with him. But when he gets down there, he tells his guys, he's like, you know what, you stay here. You guys just stay back. I got this. He starts to go down the Juneau wharf, and they had like a bunch of security guards there. They had 5 guards there. The first 2 left, and then there's a couple other guys that he just kind of walks by 4 of the 5 guys. And eventually this guy, he's about to get up to this meeting. This guy, Frank Reed, is like, nah, we're here to make sure you don't get down there. You're not allowed to this meeting. So they get in an argument, and they have, which to me, I think is like the dumbest shootout in the history of shootouts. He had told all his guys to stay back, right? He was by himself. And this guy was kind of by himself, but his guys had his back. And they start arguing. So they start arguing, then they start swearing, then they start fighting. Well, Soapy Smith tried to hit him with his gun, with his Winchester, but not with the butt, with the barrel.
With the barrel?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Here's a little bit of steel for you, bitch.
Anytime I've ever heard of somebody, Old West or modern times, getting hit with a gun, machine gun, or a rifle, it's with the butt.
Well, he tries to hit him with the barrel. Frank tries to grab it, but he gets hit with the sight and he fucks his arm up real bad. And he starts to fall down, but he pulls out his gun, and then they just both start shooting at each other. And it said the first shot, it was 2 shots, and it was so simultaneous that it sounded like one shot. And then they just started both shooting. Well, when it was done, Soapy was dead. He was shot in the leg.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I wasn't expecting this to be the end of Soapy.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting him to die in this story.
He was shot through the heart, the leg, and the arm.
Damn.
Frank was shot through the abdomen and groin, so he lived, but he ended up dying 12 days later. What actually happened? You're talking about a story between 10 guys in Juneau, Alaska in the 1800s. So who really knows?
Yeah.
So there's different accounts. It seems like he shot it out with Frank and won. It seemed like Frank was probably actually shooting from the ground.
Upwards.
Yeah. And then one of the other guys, a guy named Murphy, one of the guys that originally punked out, came back and killed Soapy. So I think it was a shootout. A lot of people say it was a shootout, and then Soapy won, and then the other guy came up.
Third party.
Yeah, after the shootout, killed Soap, shot him in the heart. They say that his last words were, "My God, man, don't shoot." So after Soapy died, the 3 gang members that stole the money were in prison, and the rest of his gang was ran out of town. One report could have been that the Murphy guy that could have jumped him might have shot him with his own rifle, but his rifle was for sure gave back to his son. They refused to bury Soapy in city limits, so he's buried several yards out of the city cemetery.
38, huh?
Yeah, 38 years old. That's a lot of life for 38 years old, man.
Yeah, he surpassed a lot of.
Well, inside of all the dark, under gangster world, he was a deputized sheriff. He was a leader of a military regiment.
Was everything.
A military captain.
He was Billy the Kid, Al Capone, all in one.
Started his own shipping company. Never shipped shit anywhere.
A shipping mogul.
Right. He was UPS.
He was Bell, had the fucking beep, the telegraph service that didn't go nowhere before wires.
Motor City Casino.
So you can see these pictures are new. Every year on July 8th in Skagway, Alaska, they hold the Soapy Smith Wake. So it's this big, I don't know, a big convention. That's
kind of cool, actually.
Yeah, that is.
I think we should do that more.
We should
Bugsy Siegel night. We should have fucking
say hello to bad guys. Vacation here.
Trip to Alaska, Skagway, motherfucker.
Go visit some of these sites. At the end of the show, just post your cash app out.
Right.
You can send us to Alaska.
Support that Skagway trip.
Coming straight on the Skagway.
We're going to go check out that Soapy Smith party and shit.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and look, that's the way to go. I know times are tough and everybody can afford that. So there's also the Magic Castle in Hollywood. They have a Soapy Smith party on July 8th once a year, too.
Okay.
Kind of similar party.
Either or. I'm good with, whatever you want to
Alaska would be the big goal, but, look, I get it. COVID and shit. We'll do Hollywood.
I think I'm going to make one of my little nephews be fucking McNimby for fucking Halloween this year, too.
Sylvester, man.
Yeah. Well, that's in the daytime. When he turns into McNimby at night, then.
A story as old as time, the old debate. McGinty versus Sylvester.
Yes.
Team Sylvester. So we start selling fucking bad guy shirts. We'll do Team Sylvester and Team McGinty.
Sly or Mick, which one came first?
So that's the story of Soapy Smith.
So say good night to the bad guy. Go on. The last time you're going to see a bad guy like this again, let me tell you.
Too bad it ended like that. And then not see that coming.
Yeah. That's the thing with getting in shootouts. You're pushing it every time. Bullets start flying. You can only... And especially when you've been in multiple shootouts. If you survived 2 shootouts,
bullets burn.
You should stay out of shootouts because the law averages says...
It's going to get you
at some point.
When you're coming in so ultra confident, though, when you're walking up and it's not even like, blah, butt end of my rifle, you're coming in like a nun smacking a kid with a ruler, like hitting him with the front of your gun, like, hey, bro, I mean, come on. You got to take precautions coming into this thing.
Yeah.
So you guys haven't seen a picture of Soapy Smith yet. If we were going to cast a movie about Soapy Smith, who would you cast to play him?
You want to go first, Tom?
No, because I have no one right now.
Right on.
What do you got?
Throughout a story, the build, everything, I'm gonna go with obviously not purple how he looked in the MCU, but like a Josh Brolin type, a big guy. I'm thinking of Josh Brolin. Well, that
so like, you know what, Thanos?
Not as Thanos, but like that big burly guy. I'm picturing like Josh Brolin how he really looks, but with like that big stupid fucking like mustache from what's the guy's name that we seen in the
Bass or whatever.
Yeah, Bass, Detective Bass or whatever.
See, like I'm
Sam
kind of
Bass.
I don't know his name, but it's the guy from that one guy, Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott?
Yeah, the guy with the white
big
hair.
mustache?
Yeah, big mustache motherfucker.
The mustache. but not Sam Elliott now, not like Ghost Rider. Which is weird because now Ghost Rider's probably 15 years old or something. Sure.
Yeah.
But like Mask.
Gar. When he was
Gar. Fucking Gar, yeah. I would cast Gar as Soapy Smith. I could see that.
You talking about the Sheriff movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. That's my boy Gar. I think he could start a gang with Richie Valens' brother.
Yep.
What was his name? Bobby?
Bobby, yeah.
Bobby.
Bobby and Gar? You know what I mean? They can take over California, bro.
Yeah.
They're the new Chips.
We're putting together an all-star biker fucking crew. Here's some pictures of Soapy Smith.
Yeah, let's see
Soapy.
this guy.
Them titties are nice over there.
Yeah, they are.
I purposely found, I was like, dude, I got... And you said earlier, you said no titties, and I was thinking, I got some titties in this bitch for you.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely got to go to the Magic Castle.
Yeah.
Is that Soapy?
That's Soapy.
That's Soapy right there, huh?
Yeah.
He looks like Pee Wee Herman when he got caught in that theater.
Al Pacino in Serpico, like from the 70s. Like. Yeah, much scrappier looking than like I thought, because like I pictured the big burliness. That's why I picked Josh as the guy. But I thought that clean, chiseled, like, because he talked his way into like the military part. That was a letter, but he talked his way into a lot of shit. Like,
looks like an Amish dude.
Definitely, especially in that first pick with that sombrero type hat. Like,
Yeah.
So now we got to do the Defcon scale. Now, standard Defcon scale is 5 to 1, 5 being the lowest, 1 being the highest. But in the Bad Guy podcast, there's no good guys. So 5 would be Lee Murray, who's your drug dealing, kidnapping, bank robber. And at 1, you got the Purple Gang, who's got multiple gang wars, multiple massacres, and they're killing people on the streets. So on a scale of Lee Murray to the Purple Gang, where would you rate Soapy Smith?
all right, I'm going first. I got to go right in the middle of the pack, 3. And it's not a insult to him. I think he's got every bit of toughness to be way up there at the top. But his charisma, some of the moves he made in 1880s to 90s were like stuff that we're still doing, like criminal-wise today. He almost, without the credit for inventing it, like pioneered it for sure. That supersedes like the toughness, the cracking you in the face. I'm sure he put plenty of bodies where they needed to go. But his was more like a... nothing unnecessary, even though where you touch on he had the quick temper and all that. He wasn't a typical hot. He wasn't out there looking for that. Like in the unique way he used the prostitutes and other ways, it was still the vice. It was still paying for sexual use, but in a different way. That's why he gets the middle of the pack for me. I'm sure inside the evil part that makes him a bad guy, yeah, that was every bit as bad as, but he wasn't as psychopathic as like most true killers. He was more of a...
Right.
He would have fit in our times right now. He would have fit in the 1960s. He would have fit in the 1980s, and he would have fit in the 2000s.
Yeah, any era.
I could give you examples of this guy's... everything he's done, we're still doing today.
For sure.
And he did it better back then in some instances. You know what I mean?
And I would agree on the 3. Like, I was thinking that.
I mean, I could definitely see a 3 because more so than the other con men, he had some violent streaks.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some shooting and there was some like violent beatings, like inconsistently. You know,
he handled shit himself for a little bit there before he hired people.
And he kind of did it all the way through to the end,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, he died handling shit himself, and a lot of con men just kind of trick their way through everything. You know what I mean? And
their gift to gab is their only one trick pony. Like
He looks like the younger version of the guy from the Poltergeist.
Oh, Powers Booth.
Yeah.
I like Powers Booth as Soapy Smith because Powers Booth was Curly Bill in Tombstone.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Sure was.
Okay.
Right.
So he could for sure do that, right?
Yes.
That character as Soapy Smith,
For
that
sure.
exact same fucking role.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, see? It's like fucking Creed. You fucking mined that shit out of a fucking... You just kept talking and eventually
Right.
you pulled out a fucking name. That, yeah. Powers fucking Booth. But not like old Powers Booth, like nowadays Powers Booth. I don't know. Is he dead?
Probably. I mean, he was
Yeah.
pretty old during Poltergeist, right?
I think he just always looked like that.
Yeah.
In the 80s, like he could look like that and just be a fucking old ass dude.
Fucking 80s, bro.
Anthony Hopkins looks pretty much, you know what I mean? Like, he looked like that when I was 7 years old. Like, what?
So we'll call him a unanimous Defcon 3.
Zach, this is Crystal Palace. Inc. NORAD has declared DEFCON 3. Scramble all alert aircraft. I repeat, scramble all alert aircraft.
All right. Well, this is Say Hello to the Bad Guy. Thanks for coming, and thanks for listening.